everyone, and welcome to the next episode of L'Exclusive, the podcast produced by PaperStreet Web Design and Marketing. As always, I'm Nancy, their host for the show, and also the Client Relations Manager here. Today, we're doing one of our special editions. Today, I'm going to be introducing Sara Dwyer, the president of Parambil, an AI company. Now, this is unusual for us because PaperStreet has talked about how we use AI and what we do and don't do. But I think this is a great chance for us to shed some light on how AI can be extremely beneficial to the legal community. And hopefully everybody can get some ideas for how they can integrate software like Parambil or something similar to their law firm. Hi, Sara. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Nancy. Great to be here.
Let's provide a little bit of backstory. Sara and I actually met at the AAJ convention, so that's how we found each other, kind of thing. So it was a nice little a chance to meet and exchange some information and get to learn about each other. So, Sara, like I said, thank you for joining us. So let's just dive right in and let's talk about yourself a little bit. Introduce yourself to our listeners.
Sounds great. So I'm Sara, originally from Miami, Florida, but now live in New York City with my husband, and as of next year, our first child.
Congrats.
Thank you. And prior to starting Parambil, I was an engagement manager at McKinsey, where I focused on AI and healthcare data for pharma and biotech companies. It was a fantastic experience. It was a mix of technology, but also clinical information. So in the early days, they would actually pair me as a data scientist with an expert clinician, and we'd build algorithms, we'd train our models. That's actually how I met our chief medical officer, Ralph. And so before I left, my teams were actually designing, building, deploying AI products at scale. And I absolutely loved it. It really influenced the way that we've built Parambil and our values. McKinsey had a very high bar for the quality of the output that we would share and a very heavy client focus. So what do the clients need? What was best for them? And so as we've built Parambil, that quality and that client focus has definitely shaped how we operate and how we've built our reputation.
Step back, because I know when I meet with our clients, a lot of our clients are kind of like, they know AI is out there, they know that it's a thing. A lot of people just assume it's chat GPT. But let's talk about AI in your parameters. So what is the AI doing? What is it assessing? What is the kind of AI that you're working with?
Yeah, it's a great question because AI has changed a lot. When I first started coding, you get to build all of these algorithms. And when you're building traditional algorithms, it's both great because you understand everything that's going to happen with your program, but it's also tricky because if you didn't define a behavior, the model wouldn't necessarily be ready for it. The algorithm wouldn't know how to handle it. So very predictable, but also requires a lot of training, logic, information there. And so,
Right? I always laugh because I'm not the technical expert here at PaperStreet. I can talk about marketing all day, but I need to talk to our tech team to fix websites. So I'm on the same boat there. So you are going to be our tech genius for the existence of this episode. So we appreciate that.
of course.
How did you get interested in AI? Just it certainly seems up and coming, but did you have a particular connection to it?
So once you kind of have the foundations of computer science and coding and can do that traditional algorithm building, the next step is typically spending time in the AI space. And back when I was an undergrad, that was more of what people refer to as machine learning, where you're actually almost giving the model examples if you're doing supervised machine learning, and the model is learning based on those examples. So for example, if we were to build a system that could identify the difference between a motorcycle and a car, rather than me explain to a model in detail that if there's two wheels, then you should make it a motorcycle and put those labels that way, the model actually learns based on a set of pre-labeled data how to distinguish between a motorcycle and a car. So
Very interesting. And
very
I can see how
powerful.
that segues a lot, especially when it comes to legal work. So your particular company that you started is connected to AI with medical records. So let's dig into that and how that sort of works and that categorization and things like that.
Yeah, so machine learning kind of in its earlier stages was very, very powerful. But if you were to ask that model we were mentioning earlier to label an airplane, it would have had, a bigger challenge. And so
Mhm.
when I was at McKinsey, we were using a mix of traditional software engineering and machine learning, like the example I just mentioned, to process healthcare data. And while I joke that, the airplane would be unpredictable, the tools when applied to healthcare data were really powerful. You could actually show a model, hey, this is what all the asthma patients look like in this data set. And then the model could identify all the patients that had asthma but actually hadn't been diagnosed yet. So the models in the healthcare space have been extremely powerful. And what has happened in the past couple of years is we've moved from a world of machine learning and those methods to a world of generative AI, where the AI has actually learned from all the medical texts, all the information on the internet, and can do so much more than focus on one specific task. So we went from a world where it was, many weeks, many resources, a lot of money to actually build a model to predict asthma, for example, to a world where you can take those problems and you can solve them much quicker and much more cheaply, which then opens up a whole new world of problems that you can go out and solve.
I find that it's very interesting because I am surprised. My own personal interest is that medical came first because I know as
Mm.
attorneys, a lot of our clients are waiting for the software to do legal research. The programs haven't really come out yet to do. You would think a lot like what you're talking about. This is what asthma looks like. So this is a patient with asthma. But in the legal field, we're trying to get the software up and running that does like Westlaw and LexisNexis and things like that, where we're looking for common statute usage, or this is a violation of a certain code or something like that. And it's interesting, and I'm impressed, I have to say, that medical came first. So how did your involvement with a medical doctor get started, and how did it go from the medical field and then segueing into the legal fields? Because like I said, it's interesting that this came first for lawyers.
Right, right. We started working with the folks who are often the defendants in these big mass
Mm.
torts class action cases um, at McKinsey, and then we moved to work with plaintiff and defense lawyers alike. Um, so as I mentioned, right, when I was at McKinsey, the technology was advancing. More and more information about the new models was coming out. And then we were also seeing in parallel more and more access to healthcare data. So you were actually starting to be able to pool a whole history of an individual in a more effective way. And so left McKinsey with a goal of focusing on this new tech and this new healthcare data access. Dr. Ralph Horowitz, who I mentioned I had met early on at McKinsey, we would build our models together. I would be the tech person, he would be the doctor, and we'd collaborate there, had actually been an expert witness both in injury cases early in his career and then in much larger products liability cases when he was head of medicine at Yale. And when we were talking about this, he would bring up stories of these bankers' boxes full of medical records and research papers and literature that he would have to go through and analyze. And we took that thread and we started talking to the law firms that he used to work for. And so we met with plaintiff attorneys, defense attorneys. We met with folks on the kind of at scale mass torts class action space. We also met with single event attorneys. And it really stuck out to us what a Herculean challenge it was to get the right data and insights for these cases, and that we could actually help them. We had
Mhm.
technology that would work and solve these problems for them. So we were brought into this space from an efficiency perspective, yes, right? These innovative attorneys said, oh, wow, this is great. We can be more efficient in extracting data from medical records. But the conversation actually ended up moving more towards, well, efficiency is great, yes, but really what we're looking for is data that can help us get to the truth and resolve cases faster and more efficiently. So, better data, better insights, and the attorneys we work with believe that you'll then have better outcomes across the board.
Yeah, and it's frequently a time crunch too, because I could tell you I've been seeing these doc review cases and things like that because I had signed up back when I was in law school for doc review jobs. And I still am part of this list and have not managed to get myself off of it. But it's funny because you'll see that a lot of times what these law firms are hiring are these people, licensed attorneys or medical experts, to go through all of these papers and papers and papers and documents and documents and documents to go through and do exactly what your tool is doing. So it's interesting that I, as an attorney, can see that I know that this was used to be very much man-powered and was a job that law firms would have to send out, hire crazy hour people, do things like that to get people to do that. So it's really interesting to me to see that. Now, how does it work with like HIPAA and all of that? How do you get access to all of these medical records?
Yeah, that's a great question. And our customers feel your pain with the doc review. You also have the challenge of, you review a medical record once, maybe at the beginning of the case to see if it's a valid case, but then that case progresses over time, new
Mhm,
insights come out, and then you're right back in the medical record pulling out information
mhm,
again, again, and again, which is, of
mhm.
course, not efficient and frustrating for teams. In terms of how we get the data, so our law firms will pull the data through their own methods, whether they're using a company or they're asking for the data themselves. We typically get it in PDF form. So we'll get, for each individual, multiple PDFs. It ends up being thousands of pages. And our platform will then ingest those PDFs. We sometimes get pictures too, and output one or more outputs, which can be validating that a case is relevant, right? Does this fit the roundup case? Yes or no? Filling out complaints, right? So pulling the injuries right where you need it in the documents, generating plaintiff fact sheets, pulling out additional factors needed for settlement distribution. So really kind of getting the right data where you need it from this source data that's really unstructured and messy to go through manually.
Now, does an attorney have to go in and set the parameters, or does someone from your team run the program and provide the information to the attorney? How does it work for these kinds of law firms?
Yeah, so the other product that we have is we help law firms prepare for trial. So whether that's a single event case or a bellwether case, we have a product that helps teams really dig into the insights they need for the case. So go through the medical record in a much more streamlined and easy to use way. So if I think about the two sections we spoke about, section one is more for mass torts, class action, products liability cases, where you have kind of the overall set of injuries and information you're looking for that case, and you're doing that at scale. Versus the medical chronology product is really more of a insights tool that gets applied to the medical records you have. So the
I'm
med-
sorry if I wasn't clear with my question.
yeah.
I meant, is it kind of like a product that the lawyers or someone at the firm can be trained to use themselves, and you just buy the program and they plug it in? So like if I were going to use Westlaw, I would go in and type in a certain case and the state and the dates that I'm looking for, things like that. Does it work like that? Or does somebody have to work with somebody from your team to get the data extrapolated the way they need it to be?
Yeah, so the medical chronology product, for example, that's self-serve. You upload, you see results back. On the mass tort side, you need a custom set of information
Mhm.
for each larger case. And so in those situations, we'll work with the leadership teams to define the criteria. We then pull in functions from our libraries, and they see the outputs in our platform or in the format they need. But we do help with that process of, what are the clinical components you need to pull in this very specific case?
That makes sense then. Yeah, because usually with those mass tort cases anyway, there's going to be a lot of investigations and things like that. So it probably would need to be more of a partnership versus a person who's doing that. So then how does this, do you know, I mean, maybe you don't, how does this get presented like in the courtroom? Do you need an expert witness, like someone like Ralph to present the data, like if you're presenting it to the jury, or does the law firm integrate it in some other way when they're producing this sort of evidence?
Yeah, so for the medical chronology product, the comfort in sharing with expert depends on the jurisdiction,
Mhm.
whether it's considered work product, whether the firm is comfortable sharing it. So there's different approaches there. Some law firms use this across their entire teams. Some
Mhm.
law firms share this with experts and say, well, it's just data, it's just facts, and we're okay
Mhm. Right.
with it. It's totally up to law firms and their preference. And then on the more at scale side, that looks like either, filed documents, like a complaint, for
Mhm.
example, or a plaintiff fact sheet that are filled out by our software,
Mhm.
or it can look like a giant Excel of thousands of individuals that have been filled out with different data for that then get submitted to central claims portals that the leadership teams are using to manage these large litigations. So
Mhm.
output is really kind of the right data, but the right data in the form that these teams need it in.
It's interesting because one of the things that we talk about at PaperStreet a lot is because for our industry, when we're using AI, we have a lot of concerns. Like we worry about plagiarism concerns for like artwork design. We have plagiarism concerns for content that's getting produced out there. So a lot of times PaperStreet is very careful to say, well, you can use AI, but this may be a problem. This could be a problem, things like that. Have you found any jurisdictions have given a lot of red tape thus far, or is the playing field still pretty open for the areas that you're looking at? Because for us, looking at it from a paper streets perspective, I don't see the plagiarism or things like that. But have you seen any red tape with going through these medical records or anything like that? Is there anything the lawyer should need to be worried about in a particular jurisdiction?
I would say when preparing for trial, the tool is meant to help support an interrogation of the medical record. It's not
Mm-hmm.
intended to replace it, right? So the
Mm-hmm.
goal is not you used AI and you never look at the source evidence. We have features within our platform that make it really easy to go back to the medical record. And so it does require some understanding of, if you're preparing for trial, this tool will help you, but you are
Mm-hmm.
still leading the case. You know more than the AI does. And so I think having that human in the loop component on the trial preparation side
Mm-hmm.
uh, tends to be important. And teams tend to want to have conversations as a firm about that to make sure that employees understand what's the goal and what's the intent of using this tool. So I've definitely seen that, right? How do you use this and make sure that people are using this the right way? And then from a jurisdiction perspective, we've seen a number of AI groups and committees come up across state bars where they're looking at this technology, they're embracing it. So I would say there's a lot of excitement and a lot of openness to the tools.
Mm-hmm.
Articles where you see hallucination and misinformation through these systems definitely set that progress back. But you're seeing more and more law firms say, all right, there's something here. This technology really works. We just have to choose the right partners and the right vendors so that we're not choosing the one that, will will do the wrong thing for us and then, really impact a case.
Yeah, and that was, I think, that was that all of that attention, which I mean, I'm heavily in the legal world. I'm not sure if you are, but when that New York lawyer presented the
Oh,
case, that
yes.
was all false and things like that. And it's funny because I did a talk with one of our partner vendors, Paul Rail, about AI and things like that. And I think it's the kind of thing like everything else, where you can rely on machines to help improve your data and what should be done, but just always have a person do it too. And it's like my husband is a physician, so I always compare the legal world and the medical world. And I really feel like there's a lot of partnership there. But it's the kind of thing like, let's say they have the robots doing surgery. I'm still going to want some sort of doctor supervising what's going on and reviewing what the robot's doing and just making sure that everything looks good. So it's the kind of thing like everything else. Use AI and make full use of it, but just make sure that you're not treating it like oh, here you go, send it out into the world and it's perfect. There needs to be a human still there. And I think that that's what we caution the law firms a lot about, just even with the AI that PaperStreet's not even connected to, because PaperStreet will tell you, like, yeah, there's going to be great AI out there. Like when that legal research tool that comes out, which is a lot like what your company is doing, but just more in legal field, make use of it, save time, cut corners where you can, but just treat it with the same mindset that, hey, there could be, machine error, or I just have to make sure I know what I'm talking about. You can't just get up there and just spew out information because it was in a report. But I
Right.
think all of what you're saying is complete common sense. And like I said, we always hope that the law firms catch that. So how did did you break into the law firms introducing this? Because we see it with PaperStreet that some law firms are all AI, they're all in, things like that. And then yet some law firms are so technology backed that they tell us they don't want to even do like something like a contact form on their website. So what did you find when you were approaching law firms? Are law firms gradually diving into this? Or do you feel like it's something that's going to explode? Do you think it's still tentative? How do you see the legal industry responding to this?
That's a great question. I think we entered the space at a unique time from a mass torts class actions perspective. There was a lot of discussion around meritorious claims, right? So, is the data trustworthy that we're looking at
Mhm,
in these big cases? And firms were really thinking about how does the data that I produce affect my reputation? How does this affect my ability to negotiate with the other side? And
mhm,
what does this look like moving forward? So, I think that kind of landscape where the plaintiff attorneys were really talking about the data, there was a conversation around that, made it a unique time period where there was a solution all of a sudden, right? Because you could link the data that you're receiving from the medical record to the sources. So you could trust the information you were receiving. So I would say from that sense, firms were excited about it, have continued to use it, and it's growing. I think from a longer term perspective, the AI is going to result in an explosion of new cases. So if you think about a products liability case, that all comes from linking a product to an injury or an outcome.
mhm,
And with
mhm.
AI, you can now comb through these massive data sets and find patterns that would take humans a really long time to see. So we'll have more cases to explore, more causal links. And with that will come a continued need for the quality of the data that's underlying these cases, right? The court system can't handle millions of cases where you can't trust the data. And so that partnership of law firm and the right kind of data behind them will continue to be super important moving forward.
Yeah, so it would seem like, from my perspective, if I'm telling like our law firms what they would be doing with this, it's the kind of thing where I would have them, or like if I were in charge of the case, I would say, well, let's collect our data ourselves and make sure the case is meritorious, and then use a tool like Parambil. That way, ourselves, we know that there's kind of like that foundation there. I think that would be a good safeguard for the lawyers. So, like maybe just starting out with the case information first and then using you as perhaps instead of just trying it out for an example. Like, first see, oh yeah, we've had 5K people complain about this, then let's explore it further. As opposed to, but I wonder, I mean, maybe some law firms will just start aggregating data. Have you seen any use of that just to see if hypothetically, hey, I don't know. I know there's like, for example, there's always cases about birth control pills. Is this birth control pill connected to cancer and then turning it into a lawsuit? Do you see where lawyers are going with that? Like, are they using the data to find the cases or are they finding the cases first?
That's a great question. So we're seeing both.
Hmm.
There. So right now we're focused on the healthcare data and AI, right? So helping them process their cases, work them up, run discovery. And so, as part of that, what we've helped one law firm do is we actually went through a giant set of medical records and said,
Hmm.
you have all these great relationships with your clients. Are there clients here that also qualify for additional mass torts that you can reach out
Hmm.
to, let them know they're available, and then continue from there. And so that was a really effective use of AI for leveraging existing client relationships and your reputation. So we've seen it on that side, right? More from the marketing side in some ways. And then on the other side, this is something that Dr. Horowitz is really passionate about. There's this idea of how can you review the literature more effectively so that you can find those links between a product or something that was studied and then the outcomes. And so we are playing in that space a little bit. That's somewhere where we're going longer term. And that's where we think a lot of progress will be made on the earlier end of a litigation, right? Actually coming up with these new cases.
Yeah, that was actually my next question is how do you think this will evolve? Like, what are the next steps for Paramble? What are you going to be looking to expand into?
Definitely. I mean, we're careful, right? We're
Hmm.
laser focused on high quality, trusted outputs, and we will continue to be. It's a lot of
Hmm.
work to get data that's trusted at scale. And so
Hmm. Of
we'll
course.
continue that heavy healthcare data focus, continue to improve our systems. And then we have a number of incredible firms that we partner with who share with us, hey, this is what we need help with. This is what we're
Hmm.
thinking about. And so we'll continue to serve them and build new technology for them. Causality is one, for example, where we get a lot of requests. And so we've been doing some exploration and R&D of that in the back end.
Mhm. Interesting. And how would you tell a law firm to budget for this kind of thing? Because, for example, personal injury claims and product liability cases, everybody's hunting for them. That's the Moby Dick. Everybody wants their white whale of getting a private liability case or getting a personal injury case that's really on the money, that this caused this and this is the problem. So if like for us with our law firms, like we'll tell you like based on your ROI, this is how you should calculate your spending for something like this. So, what would you say is a great way for a law firm to start preparing the budget for something like this? Especially because I know I talk to all of our clients, and a lot of them use November, December, the times to reevaluate what did we spend money on? What should we count on for 2025? So, what would you tell our law firms to consider, whether they're using Parambil or just something other, other AI software? How would you look at that?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think one thing that we often see our customers do when we meet with them for the first time is say, well, how much are we spending on this work today, right? How
Hmm.
much are we spending on our team's time? What are they not doing that could be done from a firm perspective because they're spending time on this? And so getting a sense of, how much this problem of reviewing medical records is costing you with your existing methods. And to be frank, right, if this is something where your system's working well, it's not costing you so much that you want to change, that's okay, right? But so doing that internal analysis first and understanding if you're getting the benefits from the spend that you want to, or if there's other ways you'd like to leverage your team time is that first step. And then there's different ways that you can apply this technology. You can apply it in kind of the more light ways where you're using it in parts of your processes, or you can go full blown AI processes on the back end for reviewing medical records. So I would say there's a spectrum and it's law firm dependent on, where you want to go within your existing processes.
Yeah, it's so interesting because we're talking about two completely different things. You're talking about an AI and a software tool that's going to help cases and things like that. But I think that's what law firms really need to for all of their budgeting needs. That's what we talk to them about. It's kind of like you have to think about the time you're spending on these projects and who is your manpower. Did you hire someone to do this? Did you hire an expert witness? Did you hire the software? Are you providing benefits for these people, and really think of these things kind of like as an aggregate, and that's kind of like what we're telling our law firms how and why to use AI. Use AI to do the things that really take the most of your time away. And the same thing is true with like a marketing company. Like if your team is spending 3 hours per month writing blogs, don't have your team write the blogs. Hire an agency that's going to get good blog content out there so you have 3 more hours to either spend time with your family or work on a case. And I think that that's really something that these attorneys need to really take into consideration with the AI as well. For anyone that's hesitant to say, oh, do I really want to pay for this kind of software? It sounds like it's great. I mean, and I would tell my law firms, yeah, definitely take a look into something like this if you're digging into medical research a lot. It's just like you have to have that initial budget. You have to budget for things outside of the law firm. And I think as time is going by, talking to people like you, AI is going to be something that's part of the budget. Not all of it's going to be free. Not all of it's going to be tools that will work and just be like a chat GPT where you just use it for a very nominal fee. I mean, I think AI is something that you're not going to want to be left in the dust for. And like I said, I think as the machines become more sophisticated, and correct me if I'm wrong, but as the outputs become more sophisticated, as the content becomes more easier and more developed to scan, it's going to really trump human error, I would think a lot. So I would think that this is something that as time goes on, is going to be something that's going to need to be part of these larger firm budgets, especially like I said, the attorneys that we spoke to at the AAJ, the mass torts claims, things like that. Like I think it's going to have to become a natural part of the budget. Would you agree?
Definitely. And I think that explanation of where is your team spending your time and thinking
Mhm.
about that is a really good one. AI is good at tasks that are repeatable and replicable, right? So something
Mhm.
that's happening repeatedly, you can do it over and over again. And so at the end of the day, it's really letting lawyers and their teams spend time on the hardest problems that are in front of them, the ones that aren't repeatable with a
Mhm.
playbook. And so it's really a tool for growing and for winning these cases.
In your experience, and maybe you don't, have you seen any other really great examples of AI in the legal industry that are maybe a little different than what you do? Have you seen that, in your experiences?
Yeah, I think you mentioned some of the legal research tools, which I've heard
Mhm.
great feedback on from our
Mhm.
customers. And then I would say, every law firm should have access to a ChatGPT or a Claude
Mhm.
for their teams. It's such a great learning tool and such a great kind of co-editor for your drafts and for your information that, there's no point in not utilizing this incredible technology.
Agreed. That's what we say too. Like, for example, use ChatGPT to start your complaint, use it to start your client letter or your demand for relief, but just don't use it for everything. But definitely be open to seeing what it outputs. Like I said, use everything, like I said, in this AI industry, especially as it progresses, it's going to grow and it's going to become even more fantastic. So realize that you need to start getting interested in it and aware of it, know that human power will still be required for whatever it is that you're doing, but just use it to get that framework to do the main elements of what it is that you need to do.
Absolutely. And knowing when to use more of a general tool that
Hmm.
can do a lot of things, but won't necessarily excel at the things you need it to do repeatedly, versus a purpose-built tool that is focused on a specific problem and usually incorporates not just AI, but also traditional software engineering, normal ways of building software that are required to have a product that is enterprise grade and can scale with you.
Well, I know I enjoyed speaking with you both at the AJ and now. So, Sarah, if someone wanted to get started, if any of our law firms are listening and want to take a look at Paramble, what do they need to do to get started?
Great question. So we have a website, parambil.com, Parambil.com, and they can submit a form and I'll reach back out and we'll set up a time to talk.
All right. Well, and is it a free consultation?
Yes, of course.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Sarah. I love being on the cutting edge of this technology and things like that. So it was a really interesting perspective, and it was wonderful for our listeners to get some open-ended ideas about how to start using AI more and the right uses for it. And like I said, I do believe in an AI product like something like this because, like I said, don't spend time at your law firm on things you don't need to be spending time on. So thank you so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Exclusive listeners. Till next time, have a good one.